Okay, good evening, everyone. Apparently, the mayor is on vacation this week. He's in beautiful Alaska, cruising around, enjoying the weather. So we won't have him to help us today with this presentation. So that being the case, let's all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we have Micah Beckwith with the Life Church here to do an invocation.
All right. Let's pray. Father, thank you for being a good God. Thank you for being a God who has set up order. Lord, we ask for wisdom now in this council meeting. Please give it to the leaders of this community. Father, we ask for your wisdom and knowledge like you gave Solomon so that we can lead your people well. Lord, thank you for your goodness and for this amazing summer that we have been experiencing. Lord, we just pray for your peace and your blessings to just rest upon Westfield as we chart a course forward into the future. Father, we love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Micah. Kim Strain, would you note the presence of a quorum, please?
Scott Willis,
Here.
Cindy Spoljaric. Here. Mike Johns,
Here.
Scott Fry,
Here.
Joe Edwards,
Here.
Troy Patton,
Here.
Scott Fry.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay.
Kim, I think you said Scott Fry twice and didn't say me. I'm here too.
Jake Gilbert.
Here, thank you.
The other Scott Fry.
Yeah.
Scott gets 2 votes tonight on everything.
We do have one change to this evening's agenda, if you didn't pick it up until today anyway. I'm going to be doing a short presentation on our council calendar under miscellaneous presentations later on. Otherwise, the agenda is as posted. First item this evening then is approval of the minutes from the June 27th meeting. Councilors, do I have any changes, additions, deletions to those minutes? Do I have a motion then to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
Motion made by Joe Edwards and seconded by Troy Patton. Kim, would you call the roll?
It's by Jake.
Oh, by Jake.
Second by
Oh, by
Jake.
Jake, by Joe.
Jake.
Scott Fry.
Leaving you out tonight, Jake, sorry. Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yep.
Cindy Spoljaric,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the claims for July 11th, 2022. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket?
I just have a question on Jeremy's email that you sent today about the duplicate. What is that all about?
That was a mistake made by us on
Okay.
our part. I mean, Carrie had been out on vacation and she picked up the June 1st meeting and not the second meeting in June, so nothing was duplicated. Checks were already, had the number on them.
Okay.
So nothing was duplicated. We're good.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Can I have a motion then to approve the docket for July 11th?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Troy Patton. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Thank you. First item of special recognition miscellaneous business tonight is a presentation, the RDC Quarterly Report from Linda Nass and Bob Beaudry. Linda and Bob, would you like to come up and give us our second quarter report?
And again, just so there's no confusion with the RDC's report to DLGF, this is council appointees.
This is a council appointees report.
I just want to make sure.
To the council, yes.
Okay. Our first meeting of the second quarter was on April 18th, and
Took me a few minutes to get dialed in, so if you listen, you won't see me or hear me at the beginning. And while talking about that time of meetings, just to let you know that that's kind of changed. Sometimes our meetings are at 6 and sometimes they're at 5. We passed a calendar that they'd be at 6 unless there was a long agenda, and then we'd make them at 5 and have public hearings always after the 6 o'clock hour. But if you want to see the meetings live, I suggest you check the agenda to make sure is it 5 or 6, because we still have to do that every time. Okay? So on April 18th was a regular meeting, and we had our, Bob was not at that meeting. Everyone else was. Grand Park user agreements, as usual, they're sent to the RDC members early. We ratify those. The Grand Park had a very good Q1 2022 report. Matt Trinian, William Knox, and Blake Hibbler from Bullpen spoke. That document is also attached to the agenda if anyone would like to look at it, or you can go to YouTube and watch and listen to their report. Something I did want to say that we're doing a very good job now on the agendas of attaching documents, okay? Not so much last year, but we're really getting to almost all the time, all of our agendas have the attached documents that we've taken up at that meeting. So after that report, and I won't go into it because you can get the whole report, but they talked about why revenues were a little bit down because of weather, why expenses were a little bit up because we did a lot of maintenance of the items around the park. And then our second item was discussion of executive director. We voted 3-1 to grant a 60-day authority to Jeremy Lawler, subject to a written document provided by legal counsel outlining duties, responsibilities, and accountabilities for the RDC to review and vote later. So that was a temporary thing. Union Street Development Agreement, 32 pages. Again, that's attached if you want to read it all. A lot of you have probably already seen it. But I read a letter from the council president, Mike Johns, stating it was not appropriate to consider since we had some underlying issues with city-owned parcels. Attorney Starnes advised the RDC they could approve it and move forward anyway. And we did that, and that was approved 3-1. The last page of that 32 pages is interesting because it's projecting the TIF revenues to pay the debt, but it will be paid by lit until TIF becomes available. So you might want to look at that page. April 25th, we had a special meeting, and this was to take up the public hearing on the declaratory resolution and vote on the confirmatory resolution amending Lantern Commons EDA to designate it as the Front Street allocation area. That passed. On May 16th, another regular meeting. 2 resolutions regarding Front Street were pulled from the agenda. That was Resolution 05 and Resolutions 06. The approval of claims for bid notice for Grand Park, notice of the sale in the paper, and the payment to the title company for the SCP land, which had been approved at a prior meeting. Ratification again to Grand Park user agreements, 17 of those. Resolution 04-2022 was the Old Town approval of form of lease. This is where the building corp will be the lessor, the RDC will be the lessee. The bonds are to be no more than $12,250,000 for the parking garage project within there. It will be paid by TIF but lit until available TIF. The ED revenue statute applied in the Redevelopment Act. That's why the building corp, not the RDA, is the lessor. Sometimes we ask questions in these meetings, so we make sure we understand the legalese of these documents. And Catherine Finello was very good at explaining why things were as they were. So there was preliminary approval to allow this to move forward to the public hearing, and the council will approve this form of lease later. This was, again, May 16th. Jim Treat and the clerk treasurer will determine the trustee of the bond for that one. June 13th was a special meeting called to approve the RDC determination of excess TIF and report to the county, city, and all taxing units by June 15th. Prior year, we had decided we were going to do this early so we didn't have to have a special meeting or rush, but we did have the special meeting 2 days prior, so we did meet that deadline. John Rogers gave RDC members preliminary documents for the next annual budget. The final numbers for 2021 were not included. It was a report from the Financial Solutions Group dated September 2021. So there will be more current numbers needed, and Bob Beaudry questioned that, making sure we get those numbers before we really get to budgets. Linda Nass asked if we are capturing the right amounts of TIF. Current balances are over $13 million. It's like $13,424,000 at the beginning of the year. It's still unclear to the RDC the uses of these funds. In 2 years, we will be doing the final setup of debt, which would be 2025, for the Grand Junction Plaza. Jim Treat said there is an opportunity with balances in TIF accounts that RDC decides to use these balances to pay off in cash rather than fund the remainder in debt. That's an option that would be available to the RDC. Not all qualifications are fully quantified at this point. Understand that TIF funds are not returnable to city funds. Once they're in the TIF funds, they're RDC funds and they don't go back for something, they don't go anywhere else. That resolution 07-2022 then passed 5-0. We asked that the resolution 02-2021 be posted on the city website for transparency. President agreed. That has been done. June 20th then was our regular meeting in June. Claims were paid on the TIFs. We asked and got clarification from attorney Catherine Finello that TIF expenses be put into bond issuance costs and paid out over the life of the bond with interest, and that is their legal opinion on how to handle. That's how the state approves it. Some people were asking, why do we have, like 30,000 of these TIF expenses? Why would we put those and pay them out for over 25 years of life? But that's how they've always done it. That's how they recommend doing it. And then those costs, which for example are the O.W. Crone costs as he reviews the TIFs, those are paid up front in our claims, and then they are refunded to the TIF accounts once this goes to bond, which sometimes is years later, okay, years down the road. So we got an explanation of that. Ratification of the current Grand Park user agreements, again at this meeting, we do that every month. Matt Trinian explained the bleacher agreement, which was questioned because it was over $192,000 and there was a 50-50 split. Ultimately, it will result that the city will pay $150,000. By the city, we mean Grand Park, and the Colts will pay the difference. And we approved those. We held a public hearing that evening on the Old Town lease. There were no public comments. So that was Resolution 08-2022 authorizing the lease with Building Corporation. The total lease amount was to be no more than $1,040,000. So over the life of the lease of 25 years, that would be $26 million with interest and costs, okay? But no more than $1,040,000 per year. The next was Resolution 09-2022, pledging TIF revenues for Union Square. There's a section that's going to be in this bond issuance in the ordinance that the council adopts, which repeals the 2019 bond issue that gave Union Square like $6 million. That will no longer be once the council established the ordinance. That was a concern that we as the RDC had, that we had approved for $12,250,000, and we didn't want to leave that $6 million in there also. So the bond with Capital One at 5.4%, being held for 30 days at that time, available by law to refi in 10 years, maybe getting a better rate 10 years from then. But that's the explanation we got to understand for the future. That passed 5-0. Resolution 10-2022 was the executive director, formally named, as Jeremy Lawler, and there was a page of duties and responsibilities attached to that resolution, and that was a concern we had before because he is the chief of staff. When is he acting as chief of staff? When is the executive director? So there was a quite lengthy list of responsibilities in there. We had some questions, but those were resolved, and that passed 5-0. So that's a quick overview. Our open issues at this time are those resolutions 05 and 06, which were pulled from the 5/16 meeting agenda, and those should have had to do with Front Street. We haven't seen those return, so we just kind of have that on a list to look for those coming. And that's really all I had. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you change the term of a lease, does that require legislative approval?
If it gets refied, is that what you're talking about?
No, well, whatever somewhere I remember in my reading of the laws of the RDC, that when the terms of a lease are changed, it requires legislative approval.
Yes, and I think that's going to go through the council, as I understand.
I'll take that. The council already,
Yeah.
with Union Square, the council already approved the form of lease that the
This was
RDC approved.
This was before Union Square. There was some mention of a change of a lease earlier, and I'm not
So
sure.
there was an initial debt obligation the council approved for $6 million related to the project that during this process was repealed as part of the normal process to allow the issuance of this debt.
Right, so there's a section in that ordinance that the council was voting that specifically says
So
it's
that's already come
removing.
before you.
Now,
Yeah, you've done that already, I do believe.
We've already done that then.
I
Yes,
believe,
sir.
yes, I believe so.
Yeah, if it deals with debt issuance,
I'm
any
kinda giving-
subsequent change would essentially follow the same steps as if you were issuing a new.
It's
So
it's not heavy on my memory.
Sure, no, I get it. There was a lot of moving parts.
Okay.
But, I mean, take solace in the fact that if there is some change in the future, it would follow the same very lengthy process all the way up and down the RDC and the legislative body. Good question.
Right.
Real quick question, sorry. The amortization costs I don't care about, just because typically, you know, bond issuance, I mean, that money gets netted usually against fees, whatever, it's paid out anyway, so I don't think that's that big of a deal. I just want to point back, you said the RDC, you were talking about 13 million, or something with 13 million, and that, I don't know if it was that specific TIF district. Is that something that's no longer utilized, or
No.
what was that 13
The
million?
13 million, the balance of the TIF districts at the beginning of this year
Yeah,
was $13,424,210.43, spread over several TIFs,
yeah,
okay? And we keep asking, you know, this balance is getting bigger and bigger, and it's projected on the financial solutions documents that it's going to be quite a bit more in a few years. So we keep asking, what are we planning to use that for? And at that meeting, we asked that, and one of the answers we got was from Jim Treat saying we could possibly use that for some cash, you know, to pay out in cash instead of accepting more debt against a TIF
for what?
for a project. And he had no specific projects
That's what my
committed.
question
That's what I
is.
said. It's not it's not been qualified yet what these
Yeah.
projects would be, but that money's there to keep in
Can
mind.
that money be used outside the parameters of that TIF? In other words,
I
if
don't believe so.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. No, I want to know at some point when, go ahead, Bob. Maybe you'll answer my question.
And I had a discussion with, I think I asked a question with John Rogers back at one of the previous RDC meetings, and he might be able to answer it, but he explained it to me that there were some unfunded developer agreements that they hold back some money for. So, and what those are, I'm not really sure. He probably has better information on that than I do.
The only reason I'm asking is because when we start thinking about, you know, like the TIF districts, and I know I've been on this trail a lot, and I say, well, you know, once we're done with that, we should let it expire and get rid of it and take the tax base back out. And I know that everybody's gonna say, oh, that costs us some money, but then we release those monies back to the schools, et cetera. I mean, we have the issue like that, like with Spring Mill, I believe, is it Spring Mill TIF district possibly. I just want to kind of reiterate, once they're done, because this is the whole, I mean, I'm not talking Westfield in general, I'm saying, you know, the power grab of government is once we get it, we never let it go, you know, and.
Well, I think too, you gotta, I mean, and Manny can probably comment on this, but I mean, once the money goes into the RDC, you know,
Yeah, I
pretty
know
much you guys lose over
It
something.
has to be spent. It cannot
Right,
go back to
yes.
city. I get that.
Right, so.
All I'm saying is, what's the
Yeah.
project? If we don't have the project, and we could use it actually to refund bonds, I presume, right? I mean, as long as it's in something else.
Jim
right? It
did-
doesn't, they can cross over, correct, Manny, into another, yes?
Complicated question. If it concerns and benefits a TIF, you could potentially utilize those funds. But again,
Fire
that's
station.
something for Jim Treat to opine on.
Right.
But generally,
Fire station,
What?
fire station.
Fire station? Yeah.
And the other part of that conversation was, because if we collect and we have more than 200% in our TIF funds, we have to report to the state and explain it.
Yeah.
So the question was, in the conversation, are we collecting too much at 100% of TIFs or 80% of a developer TIF? Should we be collecting less? Why do we have these large balances? What do we need them for? You know, they're sitting in these different TIF funds,
Yeah.
so
Well, so like
that was part of the
Cindy made a good
conversation.
point there. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, you know, I did not think of that, but I mean, I hate for those things to accumulate and then we have these TIF districts that will never go away and before long,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're, Merrillville, Indiana or whatever.
yeah, well, that's not exactly
Or
true.
Hammond.
Remember, a while ago, we discussed it. There is a statutory expiration date on these TIF districts. right?
Yeah, but the
25
one's been
years.
renewed, I think.
25 years. So, well, in very limited circumstances now, the legislature has kind of toned that way down for some of the reasons you stated. So those have an expiration date. And, you know, the usage of these is completely within control of the RDC. And I advise you guys to, you know, work with John, work with Jim to kind of work on that plan, and whatever the sustainability report that's been posted kind of dictates what to look for in the future.
Right. I'm just reporting that we had that decision, you know, that discussion at that meeting and what was said, and that was, you know, when Jim said, yes, we could use it to pay cash for a project instead of, you know, going out and bonding it on debt. But just kind of, we're keeping in our minds how much we have in these TIF districts, and as, you know, they increase over the years. So just
Okay.
wanted to share that we've had that conversation, we're not ignoring it. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, counselors? Linda and Bob, thank you for the report. And it seems like we've got some exciting times at the RDC.
Lots happening always.
We're looking forward to see what happens this quarter.
We never quite know what's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item on the agenda is actually, I'm going to be doing just a quick update report, if you will. The city council calendar, okay? As part of our organizing and ongoing efforts to organize our process and procedures, I've been taking a look at the city calendar. And as you may or may not know, we do a pre-council meeting the Wednesday before a council meeting. And when we get our pre-council agenda, we kind of know what's going to be on the council as far as new items coming through from the APC, new ordinances, resolutions. But a lot of times we have to sit there and I've got to scratch my head and go, okay, what do we do next? And I have a little scrap of paper in my notebook I look at and go, oh, that's right, this is the week we do our second quarter report with the RDC, or this is the week that we have to take and start initiate our budget activity for the year. So what I'm proposing here is that we take a look at our processes and we try to add a layer, if you will, to our council agenda. Our current agenda, as we all see it, runs pretty smoothly. We've got a start, a middle, a finish to the agenda. Everyone's comfortable with it, familiar with it, and we move on. What I'm suggesting is we just take and add another layer to it where the administration, the council, the clerk's office all know that we are anticipating these activities to take place at the council meetings in these months of the year. So what I did was I just put together a brief outline of those items that I thought we typically address during the course of the year in the meetings that we would address those at. And what I'd like to do is ask the administration, the clerk, and the council to take a look at these over the next few weeks and see if there's any additional ones you feel like we should add. So, Jeremy, you're up here. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
thank you. For the record, Jeremy Lawler, Executive Director of the RDC. Couple questions, and I apologize. I would have sent these to you all before, but I was one of the folks that didn't see this until right now. One question, everything you have on there is great, and I have no problem with any of it. I do have a couple questions. So in September, it says initiate next year's budget discussion process and procedure. So we, at least from an administrative standpoint, start budget planning in April. Is this saying that that's when the council starts getting involved?
This would be the council's agenda.
Okay.
Yes, this is the agenda for the council. So
Okay.
we recognize that, yeah, you're on this thing from early April. You're working on the next year the whole
Yeah.
way through.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're obviously doing quarterly reports to say how we tracking versus this year. We're looking at next year. But what we're thinking of is to have more of a form that, so when the clerk puts out the pre-council agenda, she knows that these items are automatically on the agenda.
Okay.
You know, as the top administrator, that these items are going to be on the September agenda, the October, the November agenda.
Sure,
So
sure.
you can start to plan ahead during the course of the year. And there's,
Yeah, that's fair. And
So-
fairly, all of these things are already in the plan and in the works. But I don't disagree. It's a good idea to have a listing of them. The only other question I had was, a comment here in November, probably actually in October, we also need to, I would say we move the annual salary ordinance to October, and then also include the annual fee ordinance. Both of those in there. And then the last question I had was any additional appropriations for the year. So throughout the year, we try to avoid it, but there's times where additional appropriations come up. We're not gonna save all those till the end of the year, correct?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. But that said, the last month of the year, we always do look at whatever's left. Kinda
Absolutely.
clean.
And really, I think that we're looking at it at least every month, but every quarter is when we are talking about it. That third quarter review in November, I would like to probably have additional appropriations ready for that period. So you and I can work on this and add some things, and I
Yeah,
just had a couple
and really,
questions.
the purpose tonight was really simply to introduce this to
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah.
And then come back at our next meeting 4 weeks from now with perhaps something that we can agree upon, and in the form of a resolution then, that so at least the council knows how our agenda's gonna look. But we wanna get your input, we wanna get the clerk's input to make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah, the clerk may have all kinds of other things that need to fall on this list too. So, very good, thank you.
I got a question, actually, Jeremy, before you get back to your seat. When are you going to start having department heads meet with council members on their budgets for the year? Has that been ongoing, or are we going to schedule those?
I don't believe they have. So right now, and I believe it was Bob that mentioned, Bob or Linda mentioned reference to the sustainability plan from last year, it being in September. Right now, the FSG is finalizing really the revenue portion of the sustainability plan. We, staff, are meeting with them to kind of finalize our budget from an administrative side prior to, and then if you all are interested in meeting with the individual department heads, I know they are all willing and excited to talk to you about them. Is there a certain format that you would like to see that done? Like groups of 3, individual? How do you want to do it?
If you give us some time, we'll come back to you with our
Okay.
thoughts in writing. Yeah.
So we'll probably plan on groups of 3 with individual department heads, so it doesn't consume all your time or theirs. And then it'll obviously be introduced in September for the public discussion.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy. So again, councilors, the purpose of this tonight, again, is just to present this to you, solicit your input, and if you can get back to me any thoughts that you have, say by August 1st, then we'll incorporate it in the form of a resolution for our August meeting. And Jeremy, same thing, if you can get anything back to me by August 1st, and we'll probably meet before that several times, but thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda, we move into the old business, and we've got ordinance 22-09, creating a local historic preservation commission. This item had a council introduction back in February 14th, initial public hearing on March 14th, was up for adoption consideration last month, and it was that consideration was postponed into this evening. So let me take just a couple minutes and give everybody, again, a quick update of this. And for those residents that are listening in tonight and who aren't aware of what's going on, let me kind of fill you in a little bit. So bottom line, just to remind everybody, as part of the state's environmental review of State Road 32 expansion, the DNR issued a certificate of approval, which is called a COA, for the project. The COA required that the City of Westfield, INDOT, and any interested parties reach consensus on acceptable conditions for mitigation for the State Road 32. One of the primary conditions for the approval of the State Road 32 project by the state is that the city draft in a preservation ordinance and present it at the City Council for adoption. Per the DNR, quote, "The ordinance shall be drafted under the guidance of Indiana landmarks and in consultation with other local groups which demonstrate an interest in historic preservation. The City of Westfield, in partnership with Indiana landmarks, shall educate each council member on behalf of the local preservation ordinance and the mechanics on how a local preservation ordinance works. City of Westfield shall fully advocate for the adoption of the local preservation ordinance consistent with state code. And it is anticipated that the ordinance will be passed by the Westfield City Council. Upon adoption of the local preservation ordinance consistent with Indiana State Code, Mayor Cook will assign the ordinance into the code and subsequent recording at the Hamilton County Recorder's Office." So this original ordinance was introduced on February 14th. It was drafted by the city using a format which is used by other communities in Hamilton County and the state. During the last few months, at the direction of our council, several changes have been made to the document, which now appears in the red line version for the council members to review. Last Wednesday, on July 6th, Ann Poindexter sent out this red line copy for the new ordinance to assist all the councilors with the changes highlighted. She also provided an overview, section by section. For the benefits of the residents listening tonight, I'm going to really quickly review and highlight the changes that were made to the initial ordinance, which again was the boilerplate ordinance used by many cities in Indiana. Section 2 of the ordinance that we see, it defined historic district, which is defined to be a map which is approved in an ordinance adopted by the City Council. Further in Section 2, it establishes that all commission rules must be approved by the City Council. In Section 3, under powers and duties, we again highlight that only homes on the National Register or where property owner agrees in writing that he's willing to be and allowed to be on the register will be shown and allowed classified on the map of the historic properties. And thus, the proposed district as shown on the map will then require council approval. Section 4 highlights, before a district is established, any classifications that take effect on the map must be approved by the council. Section 5 was a section that gave some consternation to council members. It had provided for interim protections during the course of this project, and this was eliminated in its entirety, as council members, I believe, felt that this did not or put an onerous effect onto some property owners. Section 6 is the certificates of appropriateness, and again, it is tied only to those properties on the National Register or those where the owner agrees to become part of the commission properties. Section 8 is a visual compatibility, and again, this is tied to limited homes in the district on the National Register or agreed to by homeowners. Section 12 is a removal designation, if someone buys a property that the prior owner agrees to be included in a preservation district, the new owners at least know ahead of time that that property is included within the district. And even given that, the new owners, there is a process where they could petition to have that property removed from the district. Now, it's a lengthy process. It involves going before the Preservation Commission and the council, but there is a process in place for them to pursue that. Section 13 is the enforcement by interested parties. And again, it is only applicable to homes in the historic district and to those homes where property owners have requested to be part of the Historic Preservation Commission. So in brief, that's kind of the highlights of how we got here, where we're at today, and a brief overview of the ordinance that's being presented. With that, I open the floor to councilor questions, comments.
I have one additional question for Ann. Ann, it doesn't really talk about, I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. If you are in a historical preservation zone, you choose not to participate, and you want to rezone your property, say from residential to commercial, is there anything that this ordinance stops that action from happening?
Ann?
So there's not. I mean, it's whether you're in the historic district or you're not. If you're outside the historic district, you have none of the restrictions or benefits, if you will, of that designation.
Perfect, thank you, I appreciate it.
I've got a question as well, Ann, if I may. I just want to, again, make sure my understanding is completely clear on this. I've had a few questions as well, and I just want to make sure that, that we discuss those out loud here. So there is, the way that this is written now with the section 3C, I think it is, where it says someone on the National Register or someone agrees in writing. With that language the way that it is, there is no property that will be included under any designation in any map that is created, whether it's a historical property or whether it's a contributing property or whatever the different designations would be. There's no property that would be included on a map under any designation without the homeowner, without the property owners agreeing in writing. Is that correct?
So that is correct. I mean, the suggestion that you had at your last meeting, Mark, and forgive me for forgetting his last name, but he did not have the benefit of seeing the proposed changes from before. One of the suggestions was to make it people who were qualified to be on the National Register, not just people who are on the National Register.
Sure.
The way this is drafted, it doesn't have three categories. It doesn't have qualified on the register or consent in writing. It only has on the National Register and property owners have consented in writing.
Okay. So then the follow-up to that then is there's no resident that is, there's no taxpayer right now that is going to have to worry about being limited by these guidelines, by these restrictions, without their will.
So I would say no, they should not, because when you say without their will, if they're already on the National Register, then that's a process that presumably they initiated or they're aware of.
Right. Perfect.
What happens if we don't pass this? I know it was part of these suggestions.
We don't pass it, nothing happens. We don't have a Historical Preservation Commission.
In terms of as it relates to 32 and those recommendations.
They are a recommendation. It was expected that we would, but I don't know that there's any punitive action. Jeremy,
I asked that question at the last meeting.
I believe we,
There's no punitive action. All that was required, I think John spoke to it earlier.
Yeah, that's correct. The commitment from the 32 environmental document was that we would introduce it because.
And support it
And support it and do all the things we've done up to this point. Whether or not you choose to pass the ordinance establishing the Preservation Commission is solely up to you, no longer has an impact on State Road 32.
thank you, Jeremy. Questions? Cindy?
I continue to have a concern about section 3B, and it concerns the word "and." Because right now, the language, for me, says you have to have been classified historic and on this national register. So properties outside of the area that we have in our downtown on the national register, they're not going to even be looked at for inclusion. And, you know, it's kind of a limited area. So something out in the township, for instance, which we do have planning and zoning authority for, and some historical assets, you know, things like that would not even be considered with this approach, with the way that the language is written. And so I was advocating that that word "and" listed on the National Registry based on its survey be "or." And I think if it said that, things might be a little different. There was a study done years ago. I can't remember. Kevin, you might remember. We did a survey. We have some survey information from historical aspect anyway. So I know that things like that exist, and obviously not all those parcels are National Register parcels. Is that fair?
Yeah. There's a page or two in one of our downtown comp plan amendments that specifically addresses, I think that's what you're talking about. There's probably, off the top of my head, 15, 16, 20 buildings that have various levels of contribution to our historical fabric that have been identified through, I think, through that survey that you're referencing. And I think you're right. I don't think all of them are within, downtown proper. Most of them are.
So Cindy, this takes care of the city, but it doesn't take care of the township. That's what you were kind of saying before.
Well, not just that, but I mean, we do have, there are some assets outside of what we have designated on the National Register right now that, you know, would be potentially considered, I would think. At least it would give the option for the commission to look at them, to see if it would be appropriate. Because right now, the way the language reads to me, they wouldn't be included.
So what you're suggesting is widening the scope of those properties that could be included on any sort of designation?
If the commission felt it appropriate.
Correct.
Yeah, because right now it's limiting.
But again, not changing the verbiage in C, indicating that no matter what that map comes back, the property owner needs to agree.
Correct. But this at least gives the option for the commission to at least survey it to see if it's appropriate.
So could support that.
So B would read, located within the city or township that have previously.
Well, that's our planning and zoning authority. So I mean, I'm assuming, we don't speak specifically in here to that issue, given our joinder agreement. But I'm hopefully making a correct assumption that this does cover the township because of our planning and zoning joinder.
So, I mean, I'm okay with that because the other part's been changed. I mean, because the homeowner has to opt in. And that's, they will suffer the consequences, good or bad, once they opt in. I mean, if they go to sell their home and it makes it less marketable, then that's on them. I mean, they opted in. So why don't we just change that and located within the city or township and just add "or township"? Or "and or"?
Well, no, right now it has to be on the National Register too. And so again, we have properties that are downtown that are not actually on the National Register, but could potentially be looked at for inclusion.
Yeah, because it says, or the property owner agrees in writing, right? So, I mean, in section 3C,
Right.
it says contained on the list or on the
Well, that
National
just
Register,
goes-
or capitalized, the property owner agrees to the designation in writing.
So,
That goes back to the buildings, structures, and sites and the designating on that map. But again, just to go back and look at it for a survey is what I'm talking about. And just that they have the
Okay,
ability
I'm
to
sorry,
have that
okay.
wider net.
Yeah.
so under B, would we say then that the previously have been classified historic, is it and/or listed on the National Register? Or would it be and? Or would it be or, would it be and/or?
So what I've heard Cindy suggest is that that word be changed to "or," which works. Again, section B is about the survey, what the commission goes out and identifies. Section C is what goes on the map that then has to come to council for approval. And if I'm understanding properly, Cindy is advocating for the council to be instructed through virtue of this ordinance to have a broader purview, if you will. And the three categories that I mentioned before, somebody that the property might qualify to be on the National Register, they are on the National Register, or the property owner has asked, consented in writing.
But at the end of the day, the property owner has to agree, period.
If the language in C remains, yes, because
Right.
that only gives you
Okay.
that.
And I'm only asking for the change, to B, and in section
or.
2B to
To
say
say
or.
or.
That's it, yep.
However, if I'm understanding it correctly, however it needs to read, it simply needs to go beyond those that are containing, already registered sites on the National Register.
Correct.
It can be, so essentially, anything in our area is where you want to cast the net, which I'm fine with.
And it's not saying that they would be on there, but at least gives the
Gives
commission.
them the opportunity.
Yes,
I'm okay,
'cause-
I'm okay
Yeah,
with that.
I'm
I mean,
agreeable
You can
with
just
that.
change the language to say within the city's zoning, where we're authorized to zone for the city.
I think it takes care of it simply by changing the one word,
I agree.
and to or. And I think that we cover our bases, personally.
So in 3B, you're suggesting on line 2 that between historic and listed, you want and struck and or inserted.
Yes.
Any other questions, Counselor?
I like this. This is how things get done. People actually work through things, it's a good thing.
I do too.
I can read my hate email later.
I do too.
I like it.
Gets a little muddled sometimes, but that's good. That's all part of the process. So do I have a motion then on ordinance 22-09?
I'm as historic as they come, so I would move that we adopt this ordinance.
I
with
will
the-
second that.
With the changes by Cindy.
Excellent, Joe. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Joe Edwards, seconded by Scott Fry. Kim, could you call the roll, please?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on, our next item, old business, ordinance 22-17, the Andover PUD Amendment 1, Parcel 1. This item had a council introduction on May 9th, APC public hearing on June 6th, APC recommendation on July 5th, and it's up for council consideration this evening. And I believe that Weston Rogers from our Community Development Department is going to present this ordinance to us.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Andover PUD. The proposed PUD amendment is associated with a 2-acre parcel located on Grassy Branch Road just north of Washington Woods Elementary School. The proposed amendment would modify the default architectural and development standards associated with the subject real estate. This item was introduced at the May 9th City Council meeting and received a favorable recommendation at the July 5th Advisory Plan Commission meeting. The petitioner is here tonight virtually to answer any questions you may have, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Weston. Counselors, do you have any questions or comments?
I noticed Colorado blue spruce is still on this landscape plan. And I think we handled that at Planning Commission, that would not be a good thing to do. I know it's a very minor thing, but
Yes, we noted in the revised PUD amendment text that that species could be switched out and still be in compliance. So we're reviewing the detailed development plan right now, and we will issue those comments prior to issuing
okay.
Developments. So we noted that in the revised ordinance that is before you tonight.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion then on ordinance 22-17?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 22-17.
Second.
Motion made by Scott Wills, seconded by Cindy Spelljerick. Kim, call the roll, please.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Our next item tonight is our ARPA funds for nonprofits. And we're looking to, for a vote on the committee recommendations. Cindy Spilljerick, can you present this to us?
Well, I can. We did go through all of this information. There is nothing new. I know there were some questions about different things. I did respond to the counselors with those answers. I did not hear back from any counselors except for Jake. I know you contacted me. Thank you. So I have not heard of any desired changes. And before we move through with being able to give any of these nonprofits, we'll have to have agreements with each of them. And we can start that process in updating our plan to include these once we actually get approval from this council that you want to give these funds to these groups. Are there any other questions?
I'll make one additional comment. So first off, I'll be recusing myself to vote on this because I am on Student Impact's Board of Directors. So I feel like it's a conflict to vote to approve funds for a board that I'm on. But before I do that, though, I will just simply say that I thought Cindy did an excellent job of guiding the ARPA committee on this. She came up with a very detailed rubric for a third-party group of individuals to follow. And if you look at how they scored these various non-for-profits, for the most part, the dollars that are being allocated fall in line with how they saw the allocation should occur. So I thought the process was thorough. We didn't always agree on everything, but I think it's a good plan moving forward. So with that, I'll recuse myself from any other conversation.
Any other comments?
I serve on the board of Heart and Soul, so I too have to recuse myself.
Councilors, do I have any other comments? Well, I think then the idea tonight then is to take a vote from the council so that we can give these non-for-profits an idea of how much revenue they're going to be having so they can get their budgets done and understand where they're going, right?
Yes, I'll make that motion if that's
Okay, I would like to.
able. Well, we don't have any formal resolution or ordinance on this, this is a
No, we
voice vote. Because we have already appropriated the funds and they're in our plan already, but I would like to see the committee's recommendation passed by this council for the nonprofits.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Cindy Spilljerick and seconded by Joe Edwards to go ahead and vote upon this, these appropriations as outlined in this chart here. Kim, would you call the roll?
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Again, I would like to just echo Scott Willis's, Councilor Willis's comments and thank the committee for their hard work and their diligence in putting together these numbers, meeting with everybody, creating a rubric, trying to do it in a logical, thoughtful way and using their best efforts. So I think this council appreciates those efforts. Thank you. Moving ahead then to new business this evening. First item is an interlocal agreement between the City of Westfield and Hamilton County concerning the rehabilitation of the Hamilton County Bridge Number 59 and culvert replacement. Jonathan Nail, who has joined us remotely, I think is going to be able to handle this. Is that right, John?
That's right. Yeah, for the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. But before you tonight is an introduction to an interlocal agreement with Hamilton County Highway. It is for the Westfield Park Road Culvert Project. It is a culvert replacement project that is currently just started construction, putting a box culvert in to replace two existing metal pipes that are in poor condition and causing some pavement concerns and some other issues. So we had worked with Hamilton County. They had agreed to contribute money towards the project, and this interlocal agreement simply states that Hamilton County will be contributing $130,000 towards the construction costs of this project. So with that, I would entertain any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, John. Councilors, any questions?
Motion to approve interlocal agreement.
You have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. A motion made by Troy Patton to approve and seconded by Joe Edwards. Kim, would you call the roll?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Our next ordinance is 22-31, amending the provision in the Westfield, Washington Township Unified Development Ordinance. This is up for council introduction this evening, and I believe Caleb Ernest is going to walk us through this ordinance. Caleb?
Thank you, President, members of the council. So this is an ordinance that is intended to update a current landscaping standard that we have in the city's UDO. In short, this ordinance is going to replace an otherwise outdated standard and require a performance bond for residential common area landscaping. So the bond will be required at the time when secondary plats are submitted to the city for signature. Much in the same way that Public Works operates, we will not release a secondary plat. We won't sign it until we have a bond on file. This is an attempt to kind of clear up an otherwise muddy process where the 50% rule really is triggered out of season, kind of requires an encumbrance on builders. We've already received several builders stating that they do this in other communities. We've reached out to other communities. They do performance bonds such as Fisher's, Carmel. So it's really just a standard to kind of clean up an outdated standard that we have and require an extra surety that we do have landscaping installed in the subdivisions. So I am available for questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. Councilors, any questions? Okay, hearing none, this again is just for introduction only tonight, so thank you, Caleb, appreciate your efforts. Moving on, then, our last item of new business tonight is ordinance 22-32, Westfield Yard PUD. It's up for a council introduction this evening, and we'll move on to a PC hearing on August 1st. Dane Crabtree, are you going to do the presentation tonight?
This is Kevin Todd. I'll be pinch hitting for Dane this evening. So for the record, Kevin Todd, Community Development Department. Good evening, members of the council. This item before you is a proposed new planning development to be known as the Westfield Yard PUD. Subject property is currently zoned AGSF1, agricultural single family, and is a little under 11 acres in size, and is located on the west side of Gray Road and a couple hundred feet south of State Road 32. As proposed, the PUD would allow for a maximum of 75 three-story townhome dwellings. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Davashewitz of Nelson and Frankenberger to give a brief presentation this evening. Thanks.
I want to jump out of that onto my slides.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner Grant Communities LLC, and present tonight on behalf of Grant Communities is Nate Hollander. He's a land acquisition manager for Fisher Homes. The matter before you this evening, as staff indicated, is the introduction of a PUD ordinance that's being requested to allow for the development of a townhome neighborhood. By way of general background, Grant Communities is the development arm for Fisher Homes. Fisher builds single-family homes in Westfield today at Derby Ridge and Chatham Hills. Staff went into a detailed description of the location of the site. I would only add that the Midland Trace Trail runs along the south perimeter of the site, located here. This is the Midland. Grave Road, of course, to our east, and State Road 32 to the north. The Crestview neighborhood is south of and adjacent to the Midland, south of the site. And to the east of the Gray Road, across Gray Road, are individual parcels that are within the city of Noblesville zoning jurisdiction. The subject property is an infill site with residential use between Crestview to the south and the commercial along State Road 32 provides for a reasonable land use transition. The concept plan for the site is now on display. As one can see, there is a gas pipeline easement which crosses the site from southwest to northeast. Access will be from Gray Road with 2 locations via public streets. Public street being here, T intersection, public street down to the intersection with Gray Road. The primary view from Gray Road will be of a pond and landscaping areas, and predominantly the fronts of homes facing Gray Road. The fronts of homes would be in these dwellings here, as well as the dwellings here. All homes will be on dedicated fee simple lots, which will be sold to individual home buyers. The alley load townhomes will be served via private alleys at these 3 locations. These homes here would be serviced via an alley. The homes along this motor court would be served via an alley, and there's also an additional alley located here. The other homes would have driveways that front on the public street. Pedestrian path connections to the Midland Trace Trail are also provided to promote and enhance pedestrian connectivity and use of the trail at 2 locations, one internal to the site, located right here, as well as the extension of the sidewalk or path that exists along Gray Road and terminates today at the trail. That would be extended to across our frontage and to the parcel which sits at the southeast corner, or southwest corner rather, of State Road 32 and Gray Road. Additionally, there's a significant tree line along the Midland which exists on the north side of the Midland, which will be preserved as part of the development of this site. Finally, common area spaces are provided and planned to include seating areas overlooking the pond and fountain, a dog park, and then the pedestrian trails, all of which will be maintained by an HOA. Regarding the townhome architecture, as noted, there will be a mix of front entry and rear entry townhomes. The type and style of architecture is specified in the exhibits included in the PUD, 2 of which are illustrated here. The Westfield Yard PUD includes specific architectural requirements which require substantial compliance with ultimately the elevations which are approved by the Plan Commission and Council. Vinyl siding would be a prohibited building material, and all the townhomes would include a combination of multiple materials, including masonry. Elevations include custom exteriors with a variety of elements which differentiates the home design. For the benefit of the audience that may not be familiar with the townhome formats on alleys and facing the street, this would be an example of the dwellings which would face the street with the garage and the entry door on the same side facing the street. This is an illustration which would be an example of a townhome building which had garages on the back, access via an alley with the front door of the dwelling facing the street or the internal courtyard with sidewalks running out to the street. Anticipated home values will be between $450,000 and $500,000. As noted, the builder is Fisher Homes, and the vision is to create a neighborhood of high-end townhomes, which will serve as a transition between single-family development on the south side of the Midland and the existing and future commercial uses along State Road 32. In conclusion, as indicated by Mr. Johns, this matter will have a public hearing in front of the Plan Commission at their first meeting in August. In addition to that, we've scheduled a neighborhood meeting which will occur on July 25th. The council members and staff will receive an invitation regarding that meeting, the same as which will be mailed out to the surrounding property owners. We appreciate your time this evening and an opportunity to present this matter to both the council and the Plan Commission, and look forward to returning back to the council upon completion of our review at the Plan Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councilors, questions?
I would just, maybe for Mike and Cindy, when you go to the APC, and I mean, this is actually a serious question, even though it'll sound like I'm being a wiseacre. But I mean, you know, we have the trail right there. The trail's gonna keep getting built up and built up. I mean, if somebody asks for a tunnel, what's our offset of the townhomes in the back? You know, I mean, seriously, because that Noblesville's on the other side, we're here. I mean, that intersection is getting busier and busier. I mean, literally. And in fact, somebody in the neighborhood to the east of where Scott, you used to live, asked me the other day, they said, are they gonna put something in there, you know, like lights, because it's already getting busy on Gray Road.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, when you have the town, I'm just thinking, if they'd have done it right when the other people built the other one, they'd at least provided the offsets, because as soon as you talk to those people and say, hey, if we put in a tunnel, we gotta tear all these trees down, they're like, no, you don't. Right? I mean, I think Scott and I even both talked to them, and you know, they're like, well, what do you mean you have to tear them down? I'm like, well, because it's gonna kill all the trees. And they're like, well, that's not, we don't want that. So I'm just,
Understood.
just something to think
This-
about.
And this site has some other issues with it too that are maybe not, you can't easily detect it here, but just to the east side of Gray Road there, that's where they're putting that new Duke Energy substation. So there's that to consider, I think, you know, for the developer and potential homeowners too. Now, you might not be able to see it because it is stuck in that empty lot. There really is, you know, it's there, but there's obviously going to be towers there and other things.
I'm literally, I already can think people are gonna start saying it's getting busy. I'm not necessarily against the project, I'm just saying.
I think a couple of things that we want to look at is the dedication of additional right-of-way to the city today to accommodate future construction if it does happen, so that the city doesn't have to come back to the HOA in the future and say, hey, we need to pay you for additional real estate so we can actually build this bridge, rather than can use those funds to actual construction.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we can look at along those lines of dedicating additional space for future alignment.
Yeah, I'm just,
That'd be good.
that's the only comment I had.
Okay. Thanks, Troy. Any
Can
other
I ask you a
comments?
question, John?
Yes.
That parcel to the north that is directly on the corner, and I guess it's different ownership than this parcel from what we talked about. But as I think about it, that parcel having access, I mean, likely won't have good access on 32 for another parcel there at the corner. I mean, is this project doing anything to take into account access to development of that parcel? Because
I'll confirm this, but I believe that there's a cross-access easement for the development of the multi-tenant building there
there is.
onto that site for access.
Okay.
I'm going to confirm that with staff, and I can report that to the Plan Commission at our meeting on August 1st.
Yeah, I know it's already a very challenging site for them to do anything with, and so I don't know what's going to happen there, and I almost wish it was eaten up by this project, but I realize it's a different.
And we can also look at
different owner.
we can also look at the potential of providing an easement across this site to the public street. If it's, our access is designed far enough south that it doesn't interfere with the intersection at Gray Road and State Road 32. If there's an opportunity to provide an easement whereby, if that's developed in the future, that owner would construct a driveway across what would be designated as an easement on the common area, that would eliminate the potential for conflict near the intersection as well.
Okay.
The only thing I would add also, John, I know we met last week, and it just popped in my mind when Troy was talking about right-of-ways and stuff. With that Duke power line, this development could be impacted by one of the routes, correct?
It potentially could. There's a route that runs along the south side of State Road 32, my understanding. There's a route that would run along and over the Midland Trail, and then there's also a route that would extend along 169th Street.
So I just ask you guys to keep that in mind. We certainly don't, we've already got a lot of complaints and issues around where it could go. Just don't want to create any more problems than we already have.
Thank you.
John, what's the square footage in these buildings, in these towns?
The minimum in the ordinance that's been submitted is 1,500 square feet, and I think that's a typo. I think it's closer to 2,000 square feet, but I'm going to double check that and have a, I'll shoot you an email and we'll know what that's going to be.
Okay, John, thank you very much.
Thanks a
Look
lot.
forward to seeing you back here. All right. Our next item, Star State Company food truck request at Village Park Plaza, July 12th through August 11th, 10 to 7 p.m. Kevin, are you going to talk about this one?
Yeah, there's not really a lot more to present than that. This is a company that approached us with the desire to provide this mobile food vending operation in the Village Park Plaza area on the dates listed on your agenda. Really treating this just like any other food truck.
And those dates are accurate? That just seems like a long time. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
This is not something we typically consider. We only consider requests like this for a special event that's quite temporary. A month-long seems long. It seems more permanent, if you know what I mean, like moving toward that way. I'm just putting that out there.
It is longer than a few days.
It is.
So Kevin, do you have a picture of what this would be, or can you tell us, is there any more additional information?
I don't.
Council, this is C.A. Gatlin. I represent Star State Company.
Yeah.
And we're the one requesting the permit. And so if you have any questions that I could answer, I'd be glad to answer them.
Where would this be located in Village Park?
The Washington Prime Group has given us two options. One would be in front of the Hobby Lobby, and the other would be on the other side, which they own the property on both sides, would be in front of the Bed Bath & Beyond. And
in the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am. And we would consider shortening the length of time if you would permit it.
Is this the group that's selling the steaks now out of the semi?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, it's not a semi. It's a
Or,
26-foot.
yeah, it's like a box truck.
Yes, sir. It's a box truck.
Yeah, it's already
It's a
there.
box truck.
It's over there.
It's been there for a while.
Okay, well, right, but Kevin, have there been any issues noted? Apparently, it's already there, up and functioning.
We've not been made aware of any issues. I think the first weekend that they were here, I think they set up there, but we did have a kind of code enforcement call on them because it's not a permitted use there until council would take action. And my understanding, and we can follow up on this, is that after that initial day or two, they moved to Clay Terrace, where I think they also have permission to be there until such time that Westfield City Council would give them approval to move back north of 146th Street.
What have the sales been so far that they've been there? Do you know? Hello?
The amount of sales?
Yeah. What have your sales been so far here in Westfield?
And the dollar amount?
A dollar amount? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Are you asking the dollar amount?
Yes.
I'm going to say 12,000.
Okay.
How long were you set up before requesting this permission?
It was close to a week because the addresses the lines are, they're faded into another township is what I understand. We had a permission from another town that is right there in the area, one city, and then it thought we was in okay. You know, we thought we had all of our paperwork. And
This is Troy Patton. Just, again, I really don't care that you're there, but I think that you should have to certify what your sales are to the clerk treasurer so we can track your sales tax for the area that we're in, because otherwise you're taking away sales from other local purveyors that are paying sales tax to the city of Westfield.
to do it, we've done everything with the state that we were supposed to do, and we thought we was okay with you until we got notified.
Yeah, I would approve it, given that we get the sales report. So we can track that.
So
Yeah,
I need to ask this gentleman another question. Is this selling unprepared food, in other words, steaks?
Yes, sir.
But it's not, you're not selling burritos and tacos?
Sir, it's prepackaged USDA inspected boxed beef.
Okay. So you're selling out of the back of a box truck to people who purchase this then?
Refrigerated truck.
So this isn't a food truck in the traditional sense of go there and grab a hot meal and carry it home. This is frozen steaks.
Yeah, that's correct. It's not.
That's correct. And just for clarification, our ordinance refers to this thing as mobile food vending. It doesn't specify it as a quote-unquote food truck where food is prepared. I think the definition is open-ended enough that this would fall into that.
Is it conceivable? And again, Todd, you'd mentioned, you'd mentioned that you'd had no complaints or any issues up to this point.
That's correct.
Okay, is it conceivable? I mean, we're asking for, quite some time here. Is it conceivable that maybe we approve this for, let's say, a 2-week time frame, and if there are no issues noted, then we go ahead and continue it for the additional 2 weeks requested? If there are issues, then that's a whole different story.
That's allowable under, you can approve for as much time or as little time as you want.
Can we
under
make
that
them give us
condition.
their sales report, Manny?
Yeah, to the extent that's, I honestly don't know whether that's something we can dictate. I know they have to present sales to the state that end up flowing down. But if you can impose, I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah, but if they're located somewhere else, they could be lumping that in with someplace else, and then they're getting a sales tax, or.
Sure. I'm just not certain that, certainly under this ordinance, you're not allowed to do that, but I don't know under.
You're not?
Under this ordinance that allows for the approval of food trucks, no.
Oh.
But I don't know if we have something else that requires that.
I doubt that there is sales tax on this because you're selling food, and that's exempt. If you are selling prepared food as a restaurant, there would be sales tax on it. But this is a little different. I don't know. We're giving somebody an arm up on.
Yeah, and that's my issue here. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're near the Walmart, right?
That's right.
They give us 2 options at the Washington Prime Group, so a mall group there. They gave us an option to be in front of the Hobby Lobby or to be in front of the Bed Bath & Beyond, which is closer to Walmart.
Yeah, because I have an issue with you being near Walmart because, I mean, they have a grocery store there. And talk about a leg up. I mean, that's a significant leg up for a business that's been there for a long time. I'm surprised they wouldn't have complained. If you move away from there, I guess I wouldn't have an issue with it. But, pile in it right next to somebody who's paying property taxes and right there, it's been in our community for a long time, and having you undercut their sales.
Understand.
That bothers me.
And
That's
it's
understandable,
also-
and we have the other option.
Yeah, I wouldn't have an issue with Hobby Lobby.
Okay, counselors, can I have a motion on this item here? Do I have a motion to approve Star State Company food truck request.
I will make a motion to approve it at the Hobby Lobby location for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And can be extended if they come back without complaints.
All right, I believe there's been a motion made by Scott Willis to approve this at the Hobby Lobby location for a period of 2 weeks with an extension if there's no negative responses
I think
received by.
Scott said an additional 2 weeks, which I
Yeah,
would concur.
and for an additional 2 weeks. Do I have a second on that motion?
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this. Can I just clarify what your motion meant, Mr. Councilman? 2 weeks initially, and if there are no complaints with code enforcement, an automatic 2 weeks, or they have to come back?
No, automatic 2 weeks.
Got it. That's what I wanted to confirm. Thanks.
I don't believe
And
we're
I
going to be here next
I'll
week.
go ahead and second that motion to.
But
get
if there,
this-
but if there's a single complaint, then it does not get extended for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Got
That
it.
is correct.
Thank you.
Kim, you want to go ahead and call the roll? A motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Mike Johns.
Cindy Spillier,
No.
Jake Gilbert,
No.
Joe Edwards,
No.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
No.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
I'm a no, because we're not tracking the tax.
Motion fails 2-5.
Thank you. Next item, do we have any residents who wish to address the council this evening?
Yeah, we have one card at the moment, Ronald Moore.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Moore. I live at 15868 Viking Commander Way here in Westfield, and I'm a taxpayer here in Westfield. First thing I'd like to say is I really appreciate the effort that y'all put into the Ordinance 2209. It's far better than it was when it was originally cast, and a lot of the excesses have been removed, and I think you guys worked really hard on that. I am disappointed that it was approved because there are a couple of other things, but I do appreciate all of the effort that you put into doing what you did. I just want to be, as a taxpayer, I just want to make sure that we read into the record a couple of things. First, under interested parties, you have a company that's from the outside of Westfield as an interested party, yet you left out the taxpayers who will support any kind of funding that you may suggest that would go into this commission. Secondly, in 3, I appreciate the discussion you had on the early parts of Section 3. I'd like to call your attention to the later portions of Section 3 to be aware. First of all, the commission has the authority to own property, manage property, and rent, lease, or sell property. So you've put this commission in the business of property management. In Section 3K, you have also granted this commission the authority to hire their own attorneys. I don't know how they're going to fund either one of those two, but as a taxpayer, I have concern that it's going to come out of our money that we pay in our taxes. I wanted you to be aware of that. I think that's about all that I have. Again, I say thank you for spending the time that you did and working on this ordinance to improve it to the point where it came. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. Clerk Treasurer comments this evening?
We have none.
Thank you. City Council comments this evening, starting with Cindy Spillier. Cindy, can you give us a report on the APC?
I can. APC met July 5th. Consent agenda had only one item, a detailed development plan for a parking lot for the Monon softball concession area. We recommended approval for the Andover PUD amendment we approved here tonight, and there were 3 public hearings. The overall development plan and primary plat for Phase 3 of Osborne Trails, the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD Amendment 2 that was introduced not too long ago, and the Midtown at Westfield PUD Amendment 1 for Community Hospital. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Finance Committee?
No, we're gonna have our meeting next time. I am gonna just make one comment, though, just kind of in response to Ron's comments. The one thing he's forgetting is that if someone were to have a National Historic Place and they donated it to the historic group, they would have the right then to sell it, rent it, or do something else. If that's not written in there, then they don't have that option. So although your comments are appreciated, you have to look a little broader than just the moment in time of saying they have the ability to do this or that, so.
Other comments? Okay, I've got just a couple things to say. First of all, we've talked in the past about redistricting. That's something we need to get done this year. So I have asked that Joe Edwards and Cindy Spoljaric work with me to put together a redistricting map that we can present to this council. I asked Cindy and Joe because they are not the oldest people, but they are the longest serving members of this council, all right? And it'll be our goal to get a response back to this council, hopefully the mid-meeting in August, but certainly no later than the first meeting in September, which will put us on schedule to get the numbers into the state by November 1st or 2nd, whatever the date is, so. The only other issue I had was on the city-owned property. I know that at our last meeting, the clerk's office gave a report about city-owned property. And I would like, to ask the clerk's office to continue to follow up and present us with more information about city-owned property, who's managing the property, management agreements, lease agreements. Do we have our insurance all in line for those parcels from the renters? And what type of income projections do we as a city have from those? So that's something that
I'm gonna have that on the agenda for the Finance Committee meeting also.
Perfect. Okay, so if you guys can hit it first and then come back to us.
Yeah, so it's more appropriate for the Finance Committee. The clerk has nothing to do with it.
Okay. Other than that, we have no mayor's comments this morning. Any other comments, administration? Jeremy?
Please forgive me for interject. I'm not sure if this is C.A. Gatlin with Star Stake again. Am I permitted to come and do the 2 weeks?
Permitted, I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, that's, the council voted against the food truck at the Village Park Plaza. And
Yes, sir. I wasn't familiar.
Mr. Dutton, what was the question? Can you please repeat it?
Yes, sir. I was asking, was I going to be permitted the food truck?
Right, the answer was no, it was voted down. Theoretically, you could resubmit a different request.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, before I close the meeting, just want to remind everybody that there will not be a council meeting on July 25th. So our next meeting will be the regularly scheduled August 8th meeting. So thank you all for coming tonight. Close the meeting.
Yep, thank you very much.